Well, hi guys, girls, ladies, hello. Okay, so this is the third class on the series that Manatee County Library System. You guys can hear me, right? Am I loud enough? I'm
Yes.
kind of
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. This is a series of 3 classes presented by Elements and Arcs. And again, I want to thank Gina and the library for allowing me the opportunity to do this. Thank you, thank you. Originally we did 3 classes, one was on short fiction, and then we did a writing prompt. Today we're going to talk about flash fiction. And what is really great is that, and now you know I have 2 different screens and a whole little system here set up. Several things have come out in the last 48 hours in the world of flash fiction. Is kind of great. So we're going to talk about that at the end, and I'm going to introduce you to some fantastic new stuff. And by the end of this hour, you might be better experts at this than I am. So, because of what just happened. So, I think these classes are going to be recording. So Gina will let you know.
It's recording right now.
Gina will let you know where you can see those. So before we start, what I want to ask each of you to do is to grab a little piece of paper, and very quickly, I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to think about your favorite story.
Think what?
Of your favorite story.
Okay.
And I want you just to write down the title of the story and what one word that describes how it makes you feel. One word.
We're not hearing your voice consistently, at least I'm not. It's breaking up. Could you repeat that, please?
Let me put on a thingy. Okay. All right, I will fix this while you guys write down one word and the title of your favorite story. Is this better?
Let's see. Nope.
No.
Better at all?
No, it was
No,
good.
it's lower now.
I think it's the internet. It is for me.
Okay, hold on, let me, I don't know how else to fix that.
It was better before you stuck the earbuds in.
Okay.
Better before.
I'll lean closer and talk louder.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
That's
think
good.
being
it's because-
closer.
Yeah, I think it's just because I'm further away today,
Yeah.
because this is the only way I could do this with the mouse. Okay, so I'm going to go around the room. I want you guys to introduce your name again, even though we can read it, and tell us the story, the title, and the one word. So I'm going to start with Gina.
With me?
Yeah.
I'm Gina. I'm the programming coordinator for the Manatee Library System. You know, one of the stories that sticks with me for many, many years is Crime and Punishment. And the end of it, like the very last paragraph almost, was just, I don't know, just seemed heavenly to me. And I don't know how else to explain it except that the character's revelation made me feel that way. So that's all.
Okay, cool. All right. Linda.
Oh, that's tough because I'm really reading more novels than anything else, and I've got a really crummy memory. So, you know, right now I'm reading American Dirt, and I think I don't have a single word yet, but you know, come back to me.
Okay. All right, no, American Dirt, cool. Mary Chris.
Well, I debated between Educated and The Stand. So kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So I would say for Educated, the one word would be astounding. For The Stand.
She went back onto mute.
Mary?
Sorry.
There you go.
And so for this, for Educated, the one word would be astounding. And for The Stand, the one word would be apocryphal. And I guess what I liked about both of those stories, one's a novel by Stephen King, as you know, and the other is a memoir by Tara Westphal. And what I liked about both of those is like, one, I thought the writing was beautiful, and I know people don't often think of that with Stephen King, but I think he's actually a masterful, beautiful writer. And the stories took me to a very strange and different place, and I kind of like that. I like to be taken out of the everyday and into something I don't know.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Lydia.
I was also having a hard time coming up with a story, but finally something squeezed out. It's The Book of Love by Kathleen McGowan, and the word that came through for me was faith.
Faith. Okay, great. Thank you. Pamela.
So hard to narrow it down. I kept going through Outlander because I love being there, Unbroken, but I think I picked The Nightingale. It was very inspiring, World War II book. And I just finished American Dirt, and I had to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning and still couldn't finish it because I just couldn't leave. That was a good book.
Okay, great. And what's the feeling that either American Dirt or The Nightingale gave you?
Well, of course, my father was in World War II, and it's a war I can relate to somehow more than some of the other wars because I know somebody in it. And it was different because I'm always seeing about Germany. This happened in France, and you hear about Free France, but suddenly you're really learning a lot more about it and about all these sisters went through to survive. And they did kind of keep you on the end of which sister is going to be the person at the end. So that kind of kept you going, a little suspense too.
Great, thank you. And last, Faye.
The first one came to mind as an all-time favorite. I read it every year, To Kill a Mockingbird. And I guess the word most adaptable to it would be justice.
Justice?
Or
Great.
hope.
Awesome.
You're one of those.
Or hope. Okay, cool. All right, so I want you guys to put a pin in those. Just put a pin in those as we progress here. Now, this class, this flash fiction class, again, was an original class that I did for Elements and Arcs, and it was a 4-week class. So I've condensed this into an hour, and because it's flash fiction, it should be an easy thing to do. Further, most of you have been in one of my other classes where I taught about short fiction, but we're going to do a little bit of review in that as we carry on. So the point of this class is that I want to introduce you guys to a brand new form, and it's not a new form necessarily in that flash fiction has been around for a long time. But that right now it is its own genre, and it's really super hot. There's a lot of people working in it, and there's some interesting things that are coming out of it. Does anybody here read flash fiction or know about sudden fiction or any of that at all? Okay.
Sometimes.
And, scribble. Okay, so flash fiction has been called short stories, small fictions, microfictions, sudden fictions, hybrid lyricals, poetic flash, 4-minute stories, because it takes exactly 4 minutes apparently to read them, a smoke long story, which is a story long enough to read while you're on a cigarette break, and that's in Japan. But what exactly are these little micro stories that sets them apart from, let's say, a poem or an essay or a vignette or an anecdote? Because flash fiction isn't a joke. It isn't a limerick or a tale. It's actually a laser-focused short story. And we're gonna dissect one, or we're gonna dissect that, and then you'll see what I mean, why it works and how it works. It's also really hard for a lot of writers to define what flash fiction is because it has so many different names and it's been around for a really long time. Reader's Digest has these little stories over the years. Magazines would put little stories in to make up for extra space, white space that they would have. You can even go so far back as tales of parables and those types of things. And they also have a history and traditions in Latin America, Asia, Middle East, and in Europe. Here in the United States, presently, we have, I think it's like 400 and some MFA programs. And a lot of these students work in this particular genre because it gives them an opportunity to really focus in on language, structure, plotting, character, and there's this movement now of a lot of writers writing it. Also, too, we have the internet, and the internet only allows so much time for a person to sit in front of a Zoom screen. So pieces are smaller and shorter and more concise to fit onto a computer screen or on a phone screen. In Rose Meadow Press, the Rose Meadow Press is a field guide, and I don't have a copy. I do own a copy of it, but it's on my Fire tablet. Field guide to flash fiction, and they have a brand new one coming out on brevity and creative nonfiction flash, right, Chris, on essays that's coming out in November. Paramount defines flash fiction as this: each drop encased in its own separate note, the way each drop engulfs in its own blue pearl of light. This description of rain from Stuart Dubek's story Nighthawks is closest to a definition of flash fiction as I presently can offer. A successful flash enchants us, each small story successfully rendered, engulfing us for a brief moment within a flash of its own light or truth, and the effects linger and sometimes will do so for a decade. Further, she says, flash is simply a story in miniature, a work of art carved on a grain of rice, something of importance to the artist or writer that is confined and reduced either by design or outcome into a small square space using the structural devices of a prose line in paragraph form with prose of creating an intense emotional impact. So when we first started, I asked you to say one word or of your favorite story, your favorite book, and you guys thought about it and you had to think about it. In flash fiction, you're going to walk away with that feeling, just like you would in a short story. But in flash fiction, it's intense because it's a flash, it's fast. Another definition of flash fiction is that it's more technically running no more than 1,500 words. In the Norton anthology, they're putting out their new anthology of flash fiction, I think in November as well, and they say that the maximum word count for flash fiction is 1,500 words. So not running more than 1,500 words, the author still finds it possible to tell a coherent tale into which he packs as much literature entertainment as he does his more ambitious brother, the short story. So it's not a short story either, but it has all the elements of a short story. Dorothy Parker was quoted in saying that she would sometimes labor up to 3 weeks working on a 3-page story because every word had to be true. So the smaller the piece of fiction, the harder it is to write. And we discussed that in one of our other previous classes with Gina. So let's take a look at let's take a couple of steps back. Let's take a look at what's the definition of a short story. And we said in our first class that a short story is a piece of prose fiction that typically can be read in one sitting and focus on a self-contained incident or series of linked incidents that with the intent of invoking a single effect or a mood, right? That was what we said a short story was, or is. And if you remember that I told you in the first class to picture a prairie, right? And you got all the different parts of a prairie, and that the novel can tell the whole story of the prairie, whereas the poem can tell the feelings, that the prairie represents hell or heaven or is everlasting, a little bit more ethereal. Whereas a short story, you can only tell one aspect of the prairie. So, again, in for the sake of review, a novel is plot. The plot is the frame, and the chapters attached to that framework. Poetry, the lines of the bricks that follow the structure of form. So those lines of a poem creates the structure of the poem. And in some cases, you can follow the formats of sonnet, quatrain, or a couplet rhyme scheme. And short stories have a story arc, right? There's a story arc. And the elements of the short story attached to that arc. And we discussed that before. So just for review, and before we hit the rest of these, what flash fiction is, because we've just said that in the definition that Tara gives, is that flash fiction has all the elements to, or alludes to the elements of a short story. So those elements are, again, all stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. All stories have a story arc. The exposition, which is the introduction of the elements. Rising action, woo, up to the climax, because there's trouble, and that trouble now is going to be confronted with, and there's going to be a resolve, and then slowly that action goes down around my head with my finger, where the results are played out, and then we have a satisfying end. So that's the story arc. All stories also have 6 elements that attach to that arc. First, there's a setting. All stories take place someplace. There's a point of view or a narration, and that narration is what's telling the story, whether it's a character or an omniscient being. There's a character. All stories have a character, and that character wants something. That character has a desire, wants something. There's a problem. There's a problem that's going to stop that character from getting whatever it is that they want or don't want, right? There's a resolution. All stories have a resolution to that conflict. So the conflict and the problem are going to mesh together, and there's going to be a resolution. And finally, the last big thing is change. And as we said before, change is the most important aspect to short fiction. At the end of the story, you're going to end up with a theme. You're going to end up with that one single word that describes the story. So I used the example of Cinderella. Cinderella's loneliness. Cinderella might be about inclusion. Premise is the plot, is all of that structure, is the rising arc and all the elements that are attached to it. So with flash fiction, the difference is between that, when I just described a short story, the difference with flash fiction is that it may not have all those bits. It's going to allude that it's there. Flash fiction has the elements not necessarily within the piece. The writer can hover the lens of the story over the beginning or over the climax. The writer might just concentrate on the change or the result. The writer may want you to know only the character, or the character's point of view for that second. The writer may only want to describe the setting. What makes flash fiction is amazing is no matter what the writer concentrates on, all of the elements of the story are alluded to. In other words, they're there in the background. Per Meg Progress, and we'll be talking about her later, she says no matter what piece of flash fiction, it must address the most important aspect of a short story, and that is change. You should see that there's a change that happened someplace. It has to be there in the piece. In my previous class, I said the stories are about desire. There's the desire of the main character wanting something. There's the desire of the problem wanting to prevent the character from getting what they want. There's the desire of the reader to read something. There's the desire of the writer to tell the story. Well, flash fiction, if you really want to think about it, is the brevity of desire. There is a brevity that's involved. I thought that was pretty good. So, John Dufresne, here's his book, Flash. This is my study guide right here. In his first pages says, writing short stories is the art of omission. What you leave out is as important as to what you leave in. And that's really kind of the art of flash fiction. It's like erasure poetry almost. Maybe not. What flash fiction is not. It's not a limerick. It's not a joke. It's not a piece that has a little twist at the end, which a lot of pieces come off that way, but it's not that. And it's also, and this, some people might disagree with me, but I also don't think that flash fiction should be an anecdote, or a vignette. And I'm going to give you an example of that, and I don't think I did this before. An anecdote is a telling of something, something that's happened. I went to Publix, and in the bread aisle, there was a little old lady, and she was unable to reach the hot dog buns on the top shelf, so I helped her. That's a telling of something that happened. That's an anecdote. A vignette, on the other hand, is a nice description of something. On the top shelf of the bread aisle, Publix, the butt end are the buns. The butt ends of the store brand face out over the ledge, like sleeping soldiers, and snoring next to them are their squat best friends, the hamburger buns. Below them on the next shelf are the eye-level buns, the high-ranking expensive buns adorned with sesame seeds and dried onions. At the very bottom, holding them all up, are the cheap loaves of white bread with their cardboard thin crust. They are plain, they are cheap type of bread that is wrapped around the last hot dog, squeezed together in a fist and devoured dry, crumbs and all. That is a lovely description of the bread aisle. It is not a short story. It could be considered flash because it's only 57 words, but that's not a piece of flash fiction. Here's an example of that being flash fiction. There's a young stock boy facing the jellies in the bread aisle at the Publix. A little old lady bent over from years on osteoporosis hobbles along with her cart, and she quickly notes the resemblance of the young man to her late husband when he was alive, young and fit. She can't see nor reach the hot dog buns in the top shelf. She can't afford the more expensive buns. In the Publix, she is overwhelmed by the loss of her husband and longs for his strength he always had, with her shyness and her size and stature. Too embarrassed and shy to ask for help, she decides to settle for the white bread on the bottom shelf, knowing her husband would feel bad if he had left her shy, feeble, and broken down. Excuse me, can I help you with that? And the boy takes down the buns from the top shelf and puts them into her cart and goes back to his jellies, just as her husband would have done. She is so taken by the fact that her husband still manages to take her breath away, even in the form of this young man. She manages the courage to say thank you as she passes on her way to the checkout line. And in the very end, she whispers under her breath, "God bless you and your future wife." So, same story, same thing. We got hot dog buns, we got the bread aisle, but in this case, we have a character, we have a setting, we have a problem, we have a resolve, and we have a satisfying end. Uh-oh, I think somebody's having a problem. Okay.
Just out of curiosity, how many words was the last one? Do you know, just by comparison?
I think this was like 75 words. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. Word count is paramount with flash fiction. So we already went through the word counts of what a novel is and a short story, because we said that short stories are about 1,000 to 10,000 words. We know that Norton is saying that the top is 1,500 words for flash fiction. The sweet spot, in my opinion, is about 750 words. That's 3 pages. There's also hint fiction, what they call hint fiction or microfiction. There's kind of a differential on that. It's about 50 words. There are 1-sentence stories that are 12 syllables. It just depends on the form and what the journal and the editors are looking for. Excuse me. So think of flash fiction as a microscopic world, a drop of pond water on a glass slide. You know, when you look at the drop under a microscope, you suddenly see a new world open up. Well, that's how flash fiction works. So once you expand past the membrane of 1,000 or 1,500 words, you're burgeoning into short story land, where all the elements have to be present. However, in flash fiction, you don't need to have all the elements, but there's still going to be a part of that makeup of the water. Flash fiction is its own creature. It invokes a feeling. It is concentrated fiction, and it includes generally just the essential part of the story. And every word holds weight. Okay. So let's look at some examples, starting with the smallest piece of flash fiction and working our way up. So the smallest, short story is not what you think it is. My brother came up with it, and this is it. Coughing, coffin. Let me do that again. Coffin, coffin. That's my brother's example of a short story. Now, that's silly because it's open, it's 2 words, it has some gestures, but it does follow the elements, as I said, with short stories. But the famous one is Hemingway, and I'm sure you've all heard of Hemingway's 6-word story. Apparently, Hemingway was sitting in a bar and with his pals, and there was a bet, and he said that he could write the world's shortest short story with only 6 words, and then somebody took him up on it, and he came up with this story, which is, I can never remember. Shoot. Okay, baby shoes for sale, never used. Baby shoes for sale, never used. 6 words. Hemingway, in an essay that he wrote about writing, said that the writer actually has in their mind and in the story and the construction an iceberg. The reader only sees the top, but we know, writer knows everything that's below that iceberg, everything that's below the surface. Well, in this case, the 6 words, we don't really know very much. And each reader now is going to walk away with their own ideas to what those 6 words really mean. Who was selling those baby shoes? Why were they never worn? Where is the ad? Who put in the advertisement? Where is the advertisement? You don't know. But
I was just going to say,
huh?
I was going to say that that's really good literature, because good literature, it means something different to who's ever reading the story. And as you were reading that story, you know, my first thought when I first ever heard the story was that the baby died. But now as I'm listening to it again, I'm like, well, maybe there wasn't a baby at all. Like maybe these people received these shoes or something like that, or it belonged to somebody else and they're just selling them, you know? So it's like so many different things.
Yeah. You know, when I first heard it, I thought the baby died, and now I kind of picture like some little old lady who went to Goodwill and bought these shoes and went, oh, nobody's worn them, I'm gonna sell them on eBay, you know. So that's the point, and that's the point about flash fiction, because it makes the reader work, and you know, it's there, the story's there, but the reader, brings something to it, and because it's a flash, it's like a lightning. It's amazing. So let's look up. So we're going to look at some more stories. Okay, so this next one is 25 words, and this is what they consider hint fiction, because it hints to a story. And this is called The Cull, C-U-L-L, by L.R. Bonehill. There had been rumors from the north for months. None of us believed it until one night we started to kill our children too. That's the story. So again, it alludes to stuff, and there's guilt and all sorts of things that are bubbling underneath there, but you don't have anything more than that.
Can you read that again?
There had been rumors from the north for months. None of us believed it, comma, until one night we started to kill our children too.
Wow.
Yeah, I you know, and somewhere around here I have where I got these from. The next one is also around 25 words or so, and I love this. House Hunting by Gary A. Brunbeck. The fence is tall. Good. The mother is typical white trash. Too loud. But the kids, they seem frightened and quiet. Good. Easier that way. You want me to read that again?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. House Hunting. The fence is tall. Good. The mother is typical white trash. Too loud. But the kids, they seem frightened and quiet. Good. Easier that way. So again, 25 words, goosebumps. You don't know really what's going on, but you are bringing, the reader, my audience, are bringing to the story what you think it is. But yet there's still enough there to where you can really pretty much picture what's going to happen, and it's not going to be pretty, possibly. So that's an example of a 25-word piece of flash fiction. All right, here's another one. They remembered him for the battles he fought in. She remembered him in the rocking chair on the porch at sunset, withered, telling fairy tales. So again, and that's a character-driven piece, an example of how utilizing a character with kind of an attitude on the part of the narration to tell a story.
Can you elaborate on what the arc of that story would be?
You know what, because the arc is there, and then you probably would be able to see this young person, a girl, she's a girl, and she's remembering her grandfather as being a liar. So maybe that would come up in some other way in the story. In other words, again, it's that the fact that the story is alluded to. It's in the background, it's in the shadow. You know, let's just say that it's in the footprint of those pieces. Here's another one.
Basically, I'm sorry. So basically, some of these are almost like puzzles.
Yeah.
In a way.
The smaller it is, the more, you know. So I'm going to expand this out to 700s. Here's another one on the short side, and this is dialogue, an example of dialogue. Fortune Teller by Liz Anna. Can you contact the dead? I pull a photo out of my back pocket. She stares, then hands it back. He ain't dead, honey pie. So again, through dialogue now, utilizing that, the author gives us kind of a hint as to what the story is all about. I love this one. Okay, again, here's another version. What's this called? This is called Golden Years by Edith Perlman. She, macular. He, Parkinson's. She, pushing. He, directing. They get down the ramp, across the grass, through the gate. The wheels roll riverwards. So he's helping her. They're gonna throw themselves into the river.
Oh, can you read that again, please? I'm sorry.
No problem. She, macular. He, Parkinson's. She, pushing. He, directing. They get down the ramp, across the grass, through the gate. The wheels roll riverwards. That's riverwards. That's that. Okay,
One thing I noticed about the house hunting one is that the person who wrote that story was very efficient in using the title as part of the story.
Oh yes, the title.
The title, it wouldn't have been the same.
The title, yeah, the title is part of the story too, and that's something. Thank you for putting that up because I didn't have that in this little small snippet here. It does. It brings in. It kind of brings it in. Here's an example. I had a 150-word story, but I can't find my book. So here's one that's a little longer. It's called Homecoming, and this might give you a little bit more example of that sweet spot where you have a little bit more room. And this is called Homecoming by Erica Gerald Mason. After the homecoming dance, the 10 of us chipped in and rented a cheap motel on the other side of town. Us girls were in shiny dresses and the boys were in suits and bad neckties. We imagined we were sophisticated as we toasted each other and got wasted on gas station wine. Had pizza delivered to our room, and the boys tipped the delivery driver an extra $5 because that's what classy people did. We turned out the lights, and 2 by 2, we paired off. Jamie and Mary in the bathroom, Kelly and Sam on the bed by the window, Brian and Nicole on the bed by the bathroom, Heather and Curtis on the floor between the beds. That left Andy and me to the closet. As Andy and I groped each other in the dark, I overheard a chorus of moaning and grunting as our friends tried to out-sex each other. Ugh, mood killer, I said, pushing Andy's hand away. Pretend we're on the beach, Andy whispered in my ear as he slid his fingers along the waistband of my underwear. Okay, what beach? I asked. Andy moved his hand away and sighed in the dark. Why can't you be like other girls? He asked. Or at least, why can't you try? So So again, you know, it has this again. We have character, we've got a setting, we have a problem, we have a desire, but we also see the issue at hand is that she's certainly not who she is, you know, or who she's being perceived by, and a young man asking her to be something that she's not. So, and that's Homecoming. So it actually has a feel to it as well. So again, it invokes memories, and we've all been in prom. So, you know, it's something to think about, and you walk away going, oh, okay. Now I'm going to give you, I was going to read one of mine, but we're kind of short here on time. Well, okay, I'm going to read a 200-word one. This is actually my story, because I was looking for other ones, and then I'm going to show you places. Like, so much going on right now in flash fiction today. This is called The Soak. I have an image in my mind. It's an image of a particular man. He is perhaps more scruffy than he was at the start of his day. And no matter how close his morning shave, he's reached the evening shadow. I see him soaking in a tub. There are no candles burning, no bubbles, no salt crystals filling pastel jars tucked in the corner. I see the steam rising, clinging to the surrounding tiles. Everything about him shines, and so does he. Eyes closed, his hair drenched enough droplets to drop off the ends and down his neck. Shoulders peeking above the water's surface, waiting for their turn to soak after his knees finally give up effect to the bath. He sighs. His sighs cast ripples to his toes as the heft of his worries finally evaporate from the substance of his thoughts as he soaks. The gate of his imagination opens to an image of a woman. She is by far more tousled than she was at the start of her day. He sees the way she leans against a bathroom door, arms folded, barefoot, smiling, with him on her mind. So again, in this piece, and this is actually echoing another story, it twists itself. And that's one thing that you'll see a lot in flash fiction, is that you'll have a story that starts over here, and then it kind of twists itself in the narration. You're sitting someplace else. So in this case, it started with the narration, I, and it ends up becoming more third person omniscient, with he sees, you know, so there's a twist. And of course he sees the narrator standing at the door. So so that's one of the things that flash fiction will do, is kind of trick the reader in doing, you know, in what you're reading and where you're going with it. And now finally I'm going to read a 700-word story that's a full story, but it'll also give you an idea as to how flash fiction truly works. And this is by, what's her name? Tara Laskowski, again, and she's one of the premier flash gals in the world of American flash fiction, with what she publishes and a lot of the essays that she's written about flash fiction. So let me share you one of, and I love her work, so let me share one of her stories here. And it is called, what's it called here? It's called Little Girls. Little Girls. Jane's dad called while she was out hanging clothes, his voice staccato over the cell. He had heard a story about a woman, a professional violinist. She slipped and fell on the open dishwasher. She sliced her arm open on a knife. She would probably never play again. Jane props the skinny phone between her ear and shoulder and lets her father's words flutter, clothespins pinching her fingertips. One of the pins falls from her mouth and tumbles down the incline to her neighbor's fence, where it will stay until someone else rescues it. It is sticky for early June, and the grass feels like straw on her bare toes. I want you to be careful, Janie, her father says, and she pictures him in his car, windows down, speeding with a cigarette in his mouth. He tells her that life is full of danger everywhere, anywhere. Watch out for knives and power tools. She laughs, imagining her body vibrating above the jackhammer, her arms wielding a heavy chainsaw through the wall of the nursery in progress upstairs. The nursery her husband is painting light green. A wave of nausea, common now these past days, makes her nearly drop the phone. I have to go, she tells her father. She takes a break and kneels down, pressing her fingers on her belly. A girl, she thinks. Perhaps she'll be a famous doctor, a writer, a musician, like the violinist. but the violinist thought she was safe in her kitchen. 1 second booking concerts over a tasty chicken dinner, then a cat, a skid, then blood, lots of it. Hadn't her parents ever told her never to load knives blade up? Someone had to have told her that at some time. People are always eager to dispense advice like gumballs, push, pop, chew. Her husband calls from her from the back porch. She shields her eyes from the sun, and he mistakes it for a wave. She sees the hill before her as if for the first time now. No, so steep, a quandary they had pondered when they bought the place many years ago, when her husband had promised he would build a swimming pool into the side of it, put some steps to make it easier to navigate. She takes a step towards him, her legs a pair of trembling horsehair strings. She can feel her fall as if it has already happened. Blades of brass pressing into her side, not bending for her weight, but stabbing. And her husband, just far enough away, his hands still bent in a wave, smiling, lightly thinking of pale green and quiet lullabies. Again, flash fiction, full story. We get, and we're walking away sad. We don't really know what happens, but we do realize that she falls down this incline. But the writer is so apt in what verbs she uses, in her descriptions, like say, the description of her legs trembling like horsehair strings, which echoes the violin in the beginning. Dangers everywhere, and it's right under her feet, and we get her feet in the beginning, so there's echoes throughout the piece and the structure. This is only, and I'll just show it to you, it's only this long, so you can see. So in 700 words you have a full short story, but without all the excess that we could have in there.
It's pretty clear that she lost the baby.
Yeah.
As that's really the only way to make it a full, real story.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you that that's what happened. She's leaving.
Well, but it's implied though, because
Yes.
that line, her husband, his hand still lightly thinking of pale green and quiet lullabies.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's sad. And the reason why I picked this originally too, because it was a really nice compliment to Baby Shoes.
Say again.
Because this story is a nice compliment to Baby Shoes.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So but yeah, that's what flash fiction. So you've got to see 6 words, and you've got to see how it kind of migrates itself in its space. So when you're in these little sentences, these 100-word stories, it's just a little thing, but it still alludes to the fact that all of those elements are there. When you get to something around 700 words, which in my opinion, again, is the sweet spot, you have a full story. You have setting, you have character, you've got decision, you've got the place to put in the desire, but every word counts, because she props the skinny phone between her ear and her shoulder to let her dad's words flutter, and he's in the car, so every single solitary word hinges on the word previous, and it also adds weight to the words they're following.
So what I'm getting from this, if I can just interject, what I'm getting from this, if you compare a flash fiction with a regular short story, in a short story, they're more explicit regarding the elements, meaning that you can read, the rising action, you can read the climax, and you can read the denouement, right? You can read the change that happened to this person or this situation for the most part, even though good literature kind of isn't so on the nose. But fiction, all of these elements are implied. So at the end of the story you just read, because of the sentences she uses about her husband thinking about the lullaby and everything else, the implication is that she lost the baby, whereas in a short story, we might read that she lost the baby and how that affects her, which would be the change.
Yeah.
So though we know she lost the baby, I don't know what that would be considered. Maybe that would be considered the climax, and the denouement would be what we imagine the change is in her. Because she
Yes.
to have changed because of it, but we're left to imagine what that change is.
Right, right. We are left with that. But she also gives hints too, which is another reason why I love this. Okay, so when the pin falls from her mouth and tumbles down the incline to their neighbor's fence, where it will stay until someone else rescues it. So she just does this exact same thing. She's going to roll down the hill and she's going to end up against that fence, and she's not going to move. And we already know, the writers already told us that until the husband comes and gets her. I mean, like I said, every single line in this story leads to the action so that you know exactly what's coming. And you could, and the other thing too about flash fiction, it's not a one-off. Sometimes you get to reread them over and over again, because that's the beauty of it. And I hate to say it, but I do believe that flash fiction is more of a writer's genre than a reader's genre. I think that's
to me, the flash fiction also very much resembles prose poetry.
Yeah.
You know, the format's different. Like prose poetry tends to be one square body instead of separated by paragraphs. And the language, however, in prose poetry is so spare, and each word is so important to the whole concept.
Right.
That you know, there's sort of this, you know, link between the two in my mind.
And you know what? That's a good point, Mary Chris, because that was the next thing I was going to bring up in this here, after this here, and that is the fact that flash fiction today encompasses what they call a thing called hybrid writing. And hybrid writing would be the lyrical essay, the prose poetry, flash fiction, the microfictions, combination pieces. And an example with that would be, this is Best Small Fictions, which if you really want to know more about flash fiction, this is great. Oh, and 805's in here too. And this is started by Tara Macy, who I quoted in the beginning. But there's a story in here by Carmen Machado, who also wrote Her Body and Other Parties, which, by the way, I love this collection of short stories. She's got a story in here. I can never remember what it is. It's called Mary When You Follow Her, which was originally published in Virginia Quarterly. It's one sentence. The whole entire story, and the story is 2 pages long, but it's only one sentence. So that would be considered a hybrid, in that the story itself is, it's about teenage girls and fathers and people. I think this girl gets abducted, or one of the girls gets abducted. You know, it's an interesting story about society and young women, but it's one sentence, and you don't realize it until you look at it and go, oh my God, this is all one sentence. It's kind of like the Golden Shovel, you know? So, you know, that's the beauty of what's going on right now in flash fiction. So let me give you guys some examples, and then I'm going to put the screen on, and I'm going to show you where you could find the best today. This book just came out, and yes, I have it, and I'm keeping it for a little longer from the library.
We want you guys to keep the books as long as possible, actually.
Thanks. Yes, you. This Lydia Davis, she is what they consider, she's the mother of flash fiction in America. These are her essays about writing with brevity. So it's Lydia Davis. I see you guys writing this down. The House on Mango Street. This is in schools across America. These are vignettes. So yeah, so this is a fine example of flash fiction, and it's been around for like, what, this is a 25th anniversary edition. So again, kind of in the Latin tradition, but just a whole story of flash fiction. Best Small Fictions, it's smaller. Hold on, I got another one here. There's literary journals that also deal with flash. This is from 2016 from 5 Points. Some of the better writers are in this copy. I don't know if you could still get it. There are certain writers who are known as flash fiction writers. So again, a little example of that would be Pamela Painter. Pamela Painter, Long Story Short. These are her short stories. And then we got Grace Polly too. She wrote short as well. She also has some other short stories, but it's for Flash. And is this the one? Okay, I said Meg Pawgrass. These are novellas, and this is put out by Rose Metal Press. These are novellas written in Flash. So they're connected Flash fictions that create a novella size. They're about 48 pages or more. It's really groovy stuff, and it just opened, and I don't have anything to send on Journeyman. Merry Chris. Okay. Also, if you want to study Flash fiction, these are the Norton anthologies that are coming out. And some of the stories that I read today came out of these, and they're working on new ones. This, one of the guys that did this is Christopher Merrill. He's the head of the Iowa workshop. I don't know if he's still there or not, but yeah. So there's plenty of books out there about Flash fiction that you can get from the library. But I'm going to open my screen up here for y'all, because I'm going to show you what we have that's happening. Okay, let me share screen. Host disabled. Oh, you disabled my screen share, Gina. Can I? It says host disabled participant screen sharing. You're muted too. I can't hear you.
Can you try it now?
Yeah, we're there. Cool. Thank you. Okay. Do you guys see this screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Fractured Literary Journal, and it just opened. They just opened last month. Brand new literary journal. They're doing micros and flash fiction. And as I said, Pamela Painter. Well, here's a story by Pamela Painter here. Two, actually. Matt Bell, he's got a micro. He's also very big in the flash fiction world. And I would strongly suggest that you take a minute to jump onto this. So again, it's Fractured Fiction, no, Fractured Lit, fracturedlit.com. You can see up here, there's the address. They are, like I said, they just opened, but this, you know, the masthead is pretty cool as to who they have, and the people who are reading for them are some really fantastic writers, including Cheryl Pappas and Meg Pillow, who, in my opinion, wrote the best piece last year that I ever read, a short story. So I strongly urge you guys to check this out and to follow it, because you're going to catch it right at the very beginning of this new journal. The second thing I want to show you is, can I get in here? There we go. Smoke Long Quarterly. Smoke Long, again, like we said, is the stories. These are flash fictions that you can read in the time of a cigarette break. But they have this brand new list of flash fictions for their contest. This is a contest that they run, and they're kind of a groovy journal. You know, I mean, to get into their journal is, you know, big deal. So you can take a look and see, and here's just the titles right along here. And this just came out this morning. So if you want to see winning pieces of flash fiction and what's happening right now today, I would suggest you go to Smoke Long. They also have a journal that comes out quarterly, and they also put stuff up periodically on their webpage. So definitely check that out. They also have, that's the journal itself. They also have a wonderful little essay right here, Why Flash Fiction? So if you want to read and learn some more online without having to go to the library, you can come and click on this. on Smoke Long Quarterly. But the big news, on Twitter this weekend, somebody said that Wigleaf Top 50 is like the Academy Awards for flash fiction. Well, that came out yesterday. And so you can write down Wigleaf. And Matt Bell, again, he's the editor. And they have the foreword is written by Shlomo. I can't see what that name is. But here is the top 50. Now what they do is they have a bunch of readers and they just start reading journals all over the place and they pick the top 50 stories. This is not submitted. You just don't know who's going to get onto the top 50, but here's the top 50 stories according to their readership. And there's some serious names in here. And also some fantastic journals that just do, like Gabriela Garcia, they just do flash fiction. So, so that's the top 50. But the cool thing about Wigleaf, and you can just go right in and they'll bring you right to the journal, so you can see. This is Joyland, by the way. Joyland is put out by Roxane Gay. But the cool thing about Wigleaf, or the top 50, let me get back in over here, is that they also have a long list, and there's 180 stories. And these are the ones that actually made their list, that they pulled the 50 off of. So you can see that you have all of these pieces of flash fiction that have been deemed awesome by the guys and gals at Wigleaf, top 50. Here's Tommy Dean. And there's some names that you'll see. Let me see. I'm trying to. I know that Carmen Machado got in here, but you can also see the actual literary journal. So Atlas and Alice, Jellyfish Review. He's fantastic. He's out of Jakarta, I believe. Last Balloon, Hobart. Hobart's a good journal to read. Passages North. I mean, there's a lot of really fantastic journals here. Bigger journals, Cincinnati Review, and little teeny weeny baby guys like Moon Park Review, which I had a story in, and they had 2 that made the long list. So that's also helpful too, as well. And they're very small. There's just 2 little ladies in Indiana that put out this little journal quarterly. So definitely check out Wigleaf's, because now you're going to see what is going on today. And some of the stuff's crazy, some of it's weird, some of it's longer, some of it's shorter, but this is flash fiction today. And I'll take questions if anybody has any questions.
So I just had a comment. I'm stuck on that one story about the lady who lost her child from the fall. Mm-hmm. And I would say that, for me anyway, the most important part of a short story or a story is the actual change that occurs. And the change is usually an interchange. The person changes because of something that happened. So I kind of feel like in that story, the fall is the thing that happened. Even though it alludes to a physical change, because,
yeah.
In it she's pregnant, the other she's not. The emotional change, the change to the person inside is what's the most important. And that's, in that story, that is what is left to us.
Yeah.
And that,
yeah, I mean,
that's a huge key to flash fiction.
And you as an editor of flash, in many cases, this type of story, you know what you're looking for, and you know that it's going to make you think, it's going to make you, wonder. And again, like I said, this story, the reason why I love this story is because, for this class, is because it does show all sorts of things that are just subjective. So like with the fall, the change is also too, as far as what I found was that, here she blows her father off. Well, I gotta go. And then she's putting the violinist down because somebody should have told her about the danger. Her father just told her about the danger. Right. It's everywhere, and it's under her feet. So, so does that change her? Would that, oh shit, I did something. Would that make her would that make her a better parent later in being able to tell her future children, maybe perhaps?
Sky's the limit as to how we think she changed, because it's left for us. And that,
What for us?
yeah, and that to me is what's great about the story and what makes it a real story. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There are so many flash fictions that come through that are just, like you said, anecdotes or vignettes. I mean, so many. It's not a short story in any way, shape, or form. I'm sorry. I have a problem with that, you know?
I just picked on one of Gina's things there. It's like, because it's true. I mean, no, it's true. And a lot of like Wiggly stuff, like, and I'm going to spend, a couple of weeks reading some of these stories. I'll just one or two here or there, especially the writers that I like. And then maybe a new one, like there's this new journal, Crease Cows, who the hell is that? I don't know. I got to look it up. But what, and they also have some fan zines.
Yeah.
Some fan fiction. But I mean, how many of them are going to be anecdotes and how many of them are going to be full stories? I don't know.
Flash
I want to look.
fiction is very hard to write. It is very, very hard to write real flash fiction. People treat it like it's a dime a dozen. They come through with all of these stories that aren't stories at all. It's like, no, you can't do that.
Well, I think the thing that kind of, like now we do 2 writing prompts on the Elements and Arcs Facebook page. I don't know if Emily's missed out on it because I've had my daughter, she's the one who's been doing it for me because I can't. And, so I put a limit of like 700 words or 250 words. And a lot of the people were having problems in writing within that small space. What I discovered is that a lot of times they'll tell the story and then there's this little twist at the end, like, really, actually, he was a ghost. It's not flash fiction.
Here's the thing. Time to write it. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not like, in a few hours, I'm going to churn out a flash fiction story. No, it's going to take longer to write that than to write a short story.
This story, the story, The Soap, that I read to you, which was published in Burning Word Literary Journal, I think it took me 4 months of work to get it done. So, and then put it away and then brought it back out. And I just changed it too today. I'm like, why did I put that word there? So, it's never ending. But yeah, it takes a long time. It's not something you just don't, just because it's a flash, it's not, it's something that really needs to have devotion to it on the part of the writer, because those words are so important. And again, the writer who wrote that, little girls, her name is Tara. I'll spell her last name Leaskowski, and she is the lady who runs Smoke Along Quarterly. So, and she teaches, this is what she teaches, is how to write flash fiction. She's got hundreds of essays out. So definitely look her up, read her work. She had another piece that was spooky as all get. I don't remember. It was in Jellyfish Review. So, definitely, and as you explore flash fiction, you'll find writers that you really like. And then when you read their longer work, you're like, whoa. Ooh.
Well, to get to Gina's point, Samuel Clemens once said, I would write short stories. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm not talented enough to do so. And so that harkens back to what Jana was saying, that short is harder.
Short is, yeah, it is. It's harder. And it's also harder to read too, because it makes the reader work, but more so, the reader, it's not as if people have to work, they don't want to see that as me being like, I'm just going to sit and read a bunch of, flash fiction, for an afternoon. You're going to sit and read a novel if that's the case, right? Where you're going to be transported to someplace else. So so the people who read flash fiction, you're reading it really quickly on your computer. You might read one fast before you go, because it's a flash, before you go to work, or, in the morning with your coffee. It's not the same type of reading either, is my point.
Well, once again, I think it harkens to the concept of poetry, because poetry is like that as well. A lot of times to really get, if you will, a poem, you have to read it more than once. And the poet often leaves it up to the reader to come to their own conclusions about meaning.
Yeah. Anything else, anybody?
So I just want to say one more thing, Juliana. I think a nice class would be a flash fiction, another flash fiction class where you read these stories and we talk about them. And we
We can do that.
we talk
Sure.
about them, we deconstruct them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be an incredible experience and exercise to do that. So,
Like a real comprehension class? Sure, let's do it.
yeah, you know, because
Raise
I
your
know,
hand, it's not cast.
because
I'd
I
like to
know,
Go on.
Go
what you
ahead.
say, Pam?
Yeah, I was in a previous flash fiction class and creative writing and different ones. And what I did, I have a notebook. I have all the things you gave out and all the things I wrote is in a book. So I can just flip right back and go to any of that. So I think everybody should, like in this class, I've been taking screenshots and writing stuff down that I'll redo and put in here so I can go back to it later. But I would definitely go to another class.
Well,
I do think.
Go ahead, Mary.
Sorry, I do think it would be useful, however, to have the pieces ahead of time, so that if we lose audio like we did a little bit, and we actually have some time to think about it before we start deconstructing and decomposing, if you will.
Yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that there's the only way to do that. To be truthfully honest with you, and I'm going to mention a name here that some of us know collectively, and it's Jerry Coleman, who was a teacher. I would definitely confer with him too as to what I'm doing to make sure that what I would construct is appropriate for a group of students.
It would be great if he came to the class also. And I know how much of a passion you have to help people learn how to read short pieces. So I think it would be perfect, and I would love a class like that because I really enjoyed that part of this class. Actually hearing the stories and talking about in regards to the elements that are supposed to be there. So
Sure.
let's do that.
Let's do it. We'll talk about it. And if you guys are interested, Faye, hopefully you'll be able to join up. It's going to take a little time. So yeah, let's do it. Does anybody else have any other questions about what was covered today, though? Oh shoot, I just did it again. Hold on, I lost y'all. Anybody else have any other questions?
What was the name of the book by Lydia Davis? I got her name, but I didn't get the name of her book.
Essays 1.
Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Perspectives. Essays 1. She's got another book of her short fiction too. I don't think the library has it yet, but hopefully you will.
So Juliana, maybe in a couple of days or whenever you get the chance, you can email me all of the books that you mentioned in this class, and we can put it in the YouTube underneath the video, the YouTube summary.
Yeah, I'll give it to you tomorrow.
Okay?
Yeah.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
cool. All right. Anything else?
Thank you.
Wait. Faye's talking. Faye's muted. Hold on.
Oh, I can unmute her.
Hi, Faye. We didn't hear
Hi.
you.
Okay, my question is, do you have another session coming up soon?
Not right now. We're going to work on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, we're all like, because of COVID and,
Yeah,
things are
right.
changing, things are opening. So, we'll see. And I think also too, I strongly urge, I think Pamela, you're on, and Faye on, I think everybody here is on the Elements in Arts Facebook group. So, and that's growing every day. I see
that. Yeah.
somebody just threw it out to one of the kids from Ringling. So we got a lot of Ringling professors and stuff now on there as of this weekend. So I think it's grown to like 100 members. So, you know, it's growing, and we're going to continue putting out information and stuff. So I encourage everybody to follow that in the meantime. And then also Elements and Arcs. Apparently, I paid somebody, she's in the other room over there, to create a new website just for Elements and Arcs. But she right now is doing her internship. So as soon as she's done with that, she's going to put together a web page. She's going to design it, and then there I will have all this information on that website too. So we got your emails. Keep tabs on the Facebook page for upcoming classes. And again, Gina, thank you very much for letting me take care of this and to do this for you. And I hope you guys take the time out to look at those Wig Leaf and Fractured Lit. Definitely follow those guys. That they are I can't believe the people who are involved in that, and their writing is awesome, and they're the readers. So definitely check it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye now.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
You're welcome.
Juliana.